Hello, and welcome to In the Kitchen with Brett Thorne, a food service industry podcast by Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Hospitality. I'm your host, Senior Food and Beverage Editor Brett Thorne, speaking to you right before Hanukkah starts. It begins tonight, and I will be lighting some candles on my menorah, two to be specific, for the first night of Hanukkah. Uh, the way it works is you start with two candles on the first night. One candle is used to light the other one. It's sort of the helper. And so on the first night, you have two candles. On the second night, you have three, etc., so on, until the eighth night. So that's what I'm starting. I'm also celebrating the holiday season with a very holiday appropriate uh, couple of guests. I have Carl Sobocinski, the founder and head and boss of Table 301, a restaurant group in Greenville, South Carolina, and Michael Minelli, the chef of Passerelle, which used to be part of Table 301, but Michael bought it from Carl a couple of years ago in a process that is being repeated a lot within Table 301. Carl's mission, apart from creating really lovely restaurants throughout Greenville, mostly on a strip uh, in the center of the city, his mission is to help other people and to encourage his employees who are looking for bigger opportunities, some entrepreneurship, interest in running their own restaurants. Carl is enabling them to do that by teaching them and shepherding them along, and eventually selling his restaurants to them. It's a very feel good situation in which everybody wins. Uh, People develop a nice work life balance while also making good livings and spending time with their families, and in general, living their best lives. And I hope you will take the time to sit back and enjoy this conversation that I had with Carl Sobocinski and Michael Minelli, because here they are. We can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, but I know, Carl, that you are in the process of you've built a huge restaurant empire in Greenville, South Carolina, and now you're kind of spreading it out, sharing the wealth, I think. Tell me.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think we all have an inflection points that sometimes it's at an age. For me, I was going through a leadership program through the Aspen Global Leadership Network here in South Carolina. It's called Liberty Fellowship, and I was 45 and just started looking at purpose and what I had been doing, and was it impactful, was it purposeful, and then what did I want to do with the next several years of you know still healthy time and a chance to maybe be impactful. And then I hit 50 and I started thinking and asking those same questions, and now I'm about to turn 56. But part of the strategy, or part of the thought process early on 10 years ago, was what does the restaurant business look like for this restaurant group, for Table 301? It's not unique, but there's fewer of us, I think, doing it, and I'm very careful to lump myself into some icons like Danny Meyer and Panokeratosis in Atlanta, and folks that have done similar things, or I guess I've done similar things to them, where I haven't necessarily scaled a product. I've just created new and unique entities all under our umbrella. So in talking to a lot of folks in the industry and friends and peers, I realized that if you create one, let's take Sobeys, our flagship, and you replicate it and you put it in 10 or 15 cities, that's something that a lot of people, equity firms and money managers, would be interested in purchasing and trying to scale and take to the next level of 40 or 50 or 100. But we had this unique concept, and philanthropy and giving back to the community, and helping those that have helped me along the way has always been something that has been ingrained in me early on. And so I just came up with, I think, on our own through some great conversations of, why don't we help those people that have helped us get here by helping them become owner operators, and creating the next generation of entrepreneurs and business owners. And so, Michael was the third one to pass on one of our restaurants to. And then just recently, a month ago, we passed on our fourth to our managing partner. So it's been a hugely rewarding experience to be able to, again, help those that came along for the ride and worked with us and our team, and helped me fulfill dreams that I had as a young man. And to see that next generation, that next wave of entrepreneurs come through. So it's worked out well. You get that kind of, great feeling inside of helping others, which is what we do in hospitality. We take care of others. And for the first time, when we did start selling these restaurants, I was able to take a little bit off the table and provide some savings and some retirement funds, and things that will hopefully help me and my family down the road that I didn't necessarily do in the first 15 or 20 years.
Well, let's step back a little bit and let our audience know more about you, Carl Sobocinski, and the Table 301 group. You are in Greenville, South Carolina, which was a quiet city without not a lot going on downtown. And then, you kind of you opened a bunch of restaurants down that main strip, and kind of got the city going. And now it's sort of a vibrant, thriving little metropolis. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Giving you too?
Yeah, I mean, it's accurate that Greenville's vibrant and we got a great little metropolis going here. You probably heard me say this before, but I tell people all the time, I was young, dumb, and naive. And sometimes those are three good attributes to have when you're an entrepreneur.
And you're from New Hampshire, right?
I am. I grew up in New England, born in Boston and raised in New Hampshire.
And then you went
migrated south to go to Clemson, and thought I wanted to be an architect. Studied architecture at Clemson, but like a lot of college students, I started waiting tables and bartending, and the industry sucked me in, and I love it. It was the best thing that could have happened. And then we started a little restaurant group with one restaurant in 1997, and that is our flagship, Sobeys, and it's still here today. And over the last 26 years, I think we've started and built somewhere near 15 different concepts. We still own and operate 7 or 8 of them. We've transitioned 4 of them to our managing partners like Michael, and 3 or 4 of them we've either closed or rebranded at some point over the years.
You had all sorts of things. I mean, you have Sobeys, which is sort of modern Southern, right? And you have an Italian place. You had a smoothie shop. Do you still have that?
Yeah, so that was the one we most recently sold. That was our plant-based, health and wellness-oriented lifestyle brand. And Olivia Esquivel, our managing partner, she took that over.
And you had a taqueria, which I think was the first one that you I want to say offloaded, but that sounds unkind. You enabled the guy running it to be the owner of the place, right?
Yeah, Poppy, Jorge Morales, Poppy, he purchased that restaurant from us in 2019. Gianna was the Italian concept was 2020. Michael did Passerelle, our French bistro, in 21. And then this year, Southern Press Juicery.
So now let's introduce our audience to Michael Minelli. Hi, Michael.
Hello, how are you?
And I'm great. Happy to talk to both of you. And you are the owner now of Passerelle. Is that right? Passerelle Bistro.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So tell us all about you, and tell us about Passerelle, if you would.
So Passerelle was a little French bistro, kind of in a little nook in the falls of downtown Greenville. And the Liberty Bridge is one of the largest suspension bridges I think is it in the country, Carl? I'm not 100% sure. It might be, but it's one of the focal points of tourism downtown is to go over the suspension bridge, look at the falls that have been reborn back in 2004 when they had a little cafe there. And then Carl took it over in 2013 from the previous owner, made it into Passerelle. And they ran it as Passerelle for, I mean, it's still Passerelle, but they ran it to as a French bistro for close to 7 or 8 years. And then I was talking to Carl when I moved down here in 2016 and 2017 and telling him that I moved to Greenville with the intent of, trying to get into a restaurant. And he said, I have a location that just needs some love on it. It needs an owner operator mentality. So I ended up moving down there from Sobeys because I worked at Sobeys for a year and jumped into Passerelle feet first and kind of just got my bearings of the whole park situation because it's very interesting. It's lovely in the spring, summer, fall. The winters are a little quiet, but you hunker down and you tighten your helmet and you get through the winters. But when the trees start blooming and the flowers start coming out, it's a busy little spot. I mean, we're only 80 seats outside and about 35 inside, and I mean we can have brunches where we do 350 people. It's wild. So
and it's a beautiful setting, if I remember correctly. It's sort of overlooking a ravine, and
yes, we have 4 tables on this little corner railing that overlook the falls. So those are pretty much the tables that a lot of native Greenvillians bring their friends to town to show them the city and kind of convince them to move to Greenville. So we've seen a lot of engagements there, a lot of romantic happenings there, and a lot of just people coming down to show off Passerelle that I'm meeting for the first time. They're saying, hey, you got to come see the falls. You got to see Passerelle. It's this cute little bistro in the park. It's great. So
why did you move to Greenville?
I mean, you live in New York, you know how it is. I was in New Jersey, kind of not spinning my wheels, but working very hard for a company in the Northeast that was growing pretty rapidly, and I didn't really have a second to breathe, and I really wanted to trying to focus on myself to open up a restaurant, trying to secure a future for my family and all that, and I ended up saying, look, I came to Greenville in 2014 for my sister's wedding, and we ran around downtown Greenville, all loved it. So after the wedding, we all started getting our ducks in a row, and my sister moved, my mom moved, I moved, and the whole family just took the trip and took the plunge down south to Greenville.
And I bet while you were there for the wedding, you accidentally ate in a bunch of Carl's restaurants because they're all there.
Actually, Chuck, rest in peace, was there, and he ended up coming by the table and comping us a dessert for my mother's birthday, which fell along that timeline. And I remember I set up in the upstairs, not on the not on the bridge, but on like your big main deck area up there. We had like 16 of us, and I remember looking at the menus, and it was the copper menu holder, and I took a picture of it, and I went back to New Jersey, and I was like, we got to do something like this at a restaurant. This is like classy, but it's like super. It just looks really sharp. And the wine list, I opened it up, I was like, their wine list is insane. I've never seen a wine list this large. Where did they even store that? And then Chuck was nice enough to get a manager to walk me down the stairs because he was slow at the time, and he took me for a tour of the wine cellar and showed me that little amazing space down there. It was very cool. It was super hospitable. And I said, this is like, they're doing it down here. There's, I mean, New York, New Jersey, they got it dialed in, but whoever owns this restaurant is definitely doing something special. So when I moved down here, my younger sister was a reporter at the time, and she knew Gina Bulware, who's one of the PR people for Table 301. And she got me an interview with Steve Seitz, who's their director of operations. And I sat down with Steve, and then it was just like, all the things just kind of started falling into place. We had a long conversation with Steve when I sat with him. I was getting a parking ticket, parking in a 2-hour parking space for an interview. And, but he told me his vision for what he's done and what he's planning on doing and where he was going. And I said, this is where I need to be. This is like something, the gods fell in my favor, and I'm right where I need to be. So I hoped for the interview, and I did a working interview with the management staff there at Sobeys back in, gosh, it was like August 2016. And I mean, maybe Carl saw something, but I know I used to sprint around that gigantic restaurant, just trying to see everything, and just loved everything about it. So I just kind of instantly fell in love with Sobeys. That was my pull into Carl in the restaurant.
And so you started at Sobeys and then ended up at Passerelle?
Yes, sir. So I was working at Sobeys for about 13, 14 months, and Carl was on Expo pretty much every day because he said the owner either needs to be at the door or needs to be at Expo to make sure food's getting out or maintain the pace at the door of people getting sat. So he's at Expo, he's pouring she crab soup, and I'm talking to him, and I'm just like, I gotta do something. So he says, "Have you ever been to Passerelle?" I said, "Honestly, I haven't." So the funny thing was the what really amazed me is that Sobeys had, I think, one manager at that point and a couple key holders. We had some servers that were filling in, just kind of making our way through the typical restaurant stuff. And he said, "When do you want to go?" I said, "As soon as possible." He said, "You want to start next week?" And I said, "Well, you're not gonna have a manager at your flagship restaurant." He says, "We'll figure it out." So it's just very selfless of him to just shift his whole day-to-day operation there and just figure that out so I could go start my journey into Passerelle.
Carl, why did you do that?
When you see somebody like Michael, I wish we had 100 of them, but he had the energy, he had the enthusiasm, he understood customer service, he had the passion, the drive, and so you just kind of walk along side by side, and I've never the book Good to Great, right? You got the right people on the bus, but then you got to get them in the right seats, and oftentimes we don't have everybody in the right seat. Well, it doesn't do you any good to keep them in the wrong seat. So make the changes quick and rip the Band-Aid off, and then get to work with the right people in the right seats on the bus.
Well, it sounds like if someone says, "I would like to sit there," then you let them sit there, unless obviously it's a bad fit. But if it's a good one,
No, he does.
Exactly. We have that happens a lot at I'm sure Michael deals with that with those 4 tables overlooking the falls, and then we have 5 booths at Sobeys out of 5 booth tables out of 65 tables, and everybody wants to sit in a booth. So sometimes that one's tough, but generally no is not in our vocabulary.
yeah,
As
yeah.
Cameron Mitchell said, yes is the answer. What is the question?
Right. Yeah, I was thinking more of the bus analogy, but it's also true in restaurants that there are tables and some of them are the ones where everyone wants to sit.
Mhm.
So Carl, what's the process of you passing your restaurants on to your employees?
And I told Michael when we started talking about it, his was different than Chef Kramer at Gianna. Michael took over Passerelle, which was something that, as he mentioned, we purchased and renovated and remodeled and rebranded in 2012. And we were just kind of spinning our wheels. We had good people in there running it, but they didn't have that ownership mentality. And so I was just at a point where after 4 years, I didn't want to spin my wheels anymore. And I said, this thing has so much potential. And you want to be an owner operator, why don't you go check it out and see what you think? And so after he went in there and he saw what it was like and that he could make a difference, I said, well, here's my goals and I know your goals. So let's set up a 3-phase process, almost like hiring somebody and then doing a 6-month review and a 12-month review. So we set up 3 phases, and as Michael hit each different phase, then more ownership would be awarded to him, and then there would be a purchase of some of the ownership at the final stage. So that was the way we set that one up with Chef Kramer. I knew that when we hired him that he was joining our team in the hopes of owning his own restaurant one day, and that we would build that restaurant together. He would enter it with some sweat equity and be the managing partner. And then at the right appropriate time, after we had paid off the initial debt, then we would settle on a sale price and whatnot. So I think each opportunity can look infinitely different depending on what the circumstances are. And just to further that, our last 2 restaurants that we've done, one in 2021 and one the beginning of this year, January of 23, we did those with internal folks that, much like Chef Kramer, we built those and they were already on the team and a big part of it. And so they're the managing partners with some equity, and they will have the opportunity to buy those down the road here.
So it varies based on the situation. The first one that you spun off was the taqueria, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And what was that like?
It was it probably gave us the greatest satisfaction and really the best story there is, because Jorge Morales came here as an immigrant alone he worked at Sobeys on day one. So that was 26 years. He's probably been in the States for 30 years. After he got to the States and he got established, he brought his family, and then he came to work for us as a dishwasher, and he worked his way up from a porter and in the dish room to a prep cook to a kitchen manager to an owner operator of Poppy's Tacos.
Amazing.
And we built it, with the intent of him. It was built all around him. It's called Poppy's Tacos, and he was affectionately referred to as Poppy in the restaurant. And on Saturdays, a different cook or chef would make family meal. And every time it was his turn, he would make these amazing enchiladas and tacos and all this amazing Mexican street food from his family recipes. And so I would walk through the kitchen and try the food. And, one day I was like, Poppy, you and me, we're going to open a restaurant one day, Poppy's Tacos. And he's like, okay, yes, sir. I would love to. Yes, sir. And so we spun that into literally opening up this little taqueria. For a while, we called it the food truck without wheels, because it's about 800 square feet. It's a tiny footprint and difficult to generate, real high sales and revenue. So we wanted to make sure before he took that project on that it generated enough sales and that he understood the financials and the whole business side of it to really make sure that he had a chance to succeed for him and his family. And, out of that less than $1 million a year revenue operation, somewhere in the 650 to 800 a year, he's been able to make a nice living for himself and his family. And they just opened about 2 months ago. They just opened their second store. So it's a great story. I love it.
Yeah, that warms the heart to kind of train people and then see what they're good at and help them succeed. And the fact that he was able to open a second restaurant, that's awesome. That's hard to do.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And
they have a food truck.
So they have 2 locations and a food truck.
Yeah.
Food truck. Cool. And Michael, when did you take ownership of Passerelle?
So I did the buy-in started back in 2018. I think it was right after, right before my son was born, because we ended up having a little firecracker a little early with me and my wife. And we ran through the agreement pretty quick. I mean, it was COVID, but we tightened our belts with everything and got through 19 and 20. In the end of 20, it was December 31st. We finished it off.
And your wife is the chef, right?
She was. We have a 5.5-month-old and a 4.5 or a 5-year-old turning 5 in a week. So she's taken somewhat of a step back. She's booking all the events now, which is turned into almost a full-time job, but she's doing it from home, which is great. So she's able to spend the time with the boys and be a mom and all that stuff. So we have a chef in there, a sous chef, and then I have 2 managers now, which we haven't had before, but it enables me to have a little more freedom to spend time with family and then be there during the busy times, but know that the restaurant's being managed and I don't have to be tied to it for my 7-8 shifts a week every single week. So it's nice. I can be there to support and give the feedback and be in the restaurant as much as I want to, but also have the ability to see kids grow up and all that, which is very necessary.
Well, and that was your whole idea when you moved to Greenville in the first place, wasn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So Michael's not telling you the whole story. So when he took over,
we never do.
So when he took over and started at Passerelle, he was down there and working with a team that was there. And then, as tends to happen in many industries, but in the restaurant industry, a romance blossomed. And yes, his wife is a chef. And prior to coming to Greenville, I think Jen owned her own restaurant. So she has that ownership, understanding, and mentality. But their romance blossomed and they got married and they have their 2 children. And so she is always a chef. She just isn't in the restaurant these days.
Correct. I keep telling her, I said, when the boys get a little older and they're in school, will you come back? Because at the restaurant, we work very well together. We have a very good work relationship. I mean, obviously we're married, but our work relationship doesn't falter in the restaurant. We know that we're looking out for each other, and that's always what I envisioned. So I'll go back to what Carl's saying is I was working at Sobeys, and I always knew if I was going to survive in this business and ever have a family, I'd have to have somebody in the industry that was like-minded, like myself, that had the same style of work ethic, but maybe somebody in the back. And when she walked into Sobeys, I said, "That's my wife." Like, she walked in, and I said, "That's her." Like, I knew it instantly. And she still says, "You're full of shit." But I said, "No, I'm dead serious." Like, you walked in your chef jacket with your hair up in a bun, and I was like, "That's my wife. That's her. I gotta go get her." So we were driving home. I went to Nosedive for a drink. Little short story. We
Another
Nosedive is
Table 301 location, right?
another Table 301 location. So I was single at the time, but Jem, my wife, was working there. And I went to Nosedive to get a drink and a bite to eat after work, and then was driving home. And I was at a red light. We're pulling up to a red light, and I saw her car there. Like, I saw her just smoking a cigarette out the window, and I pulled up. I said, "Jen, what are you doing?" I said, "Chef, what are you doing?" And she says, "I'm heading home." I said, "You want to go get a drink?" And she said, "Sure, where are we going?" I said, "Follow me." So I pulled in front of her. We took off, and then the rest was history. So it happened very quickly, but yeah, she ended up moving down to Passerelle as the chef in, gosh, it was probably like September. So she was about 7 months pregnant, and worked the line until the day before she had the baby. She's a strong woman.
So, well, it's nice that she liked you back, because that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
always the case. So
No. That's very true. That's very true. Well,
that's great.
yeah.
And so, what are your plans with Passerelle?
So, I mean, just keeping the wheel in motion at this point. We have a good thing going. So I'm kind of waiting for the right opportunity to strike me for something else. But I mean, I don't want to be too content, but I like the freedoms I have right now with being able to see the kids and all that. And I'm thinking in the next maybe couple years when they get a little older, maybe try to dive into something else. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to focus on family and make sure family stays good and stable, because the restaurant business can be challenging with a family. So we have great managers. They've all risen from within. Um, so they have a love for Passerelle, which is nice. I have 2 servers that are in the managerial roles that run the restaurant exactly how I would want it run. Granted, they're young and they make some mistakes, but they are always looking out for the best interest of the restaurant. And they were all Table 301 employees before, so they all have that mindset. They all have that hospitality gene, and it's good. I'm in a very very good place. So
A lot of chefs and restaurant people have talked seriously about work-life balance since the pandemic started, but it wasn't much of the conversation most of the time beforehand. Restaurant people work themselves to death.
Correct.
Although, Carl, you were already in the process of offloading your businesses quite a few years before COVID started. I think we were talking at the National Restaurant Show, I don't know, quite a while ago, and you were already getting ready to transition Poppy's away from you and to its owner. So what allowed you to have that perspective of it sounds like not just elevating the people around you and allowing them to be entrepreneurs, but also to like not have your fingers in all of the pies and to kind of step back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, several things, have benefited me over the course of this. I mean, in 2006, I was nominated to join the board of the National Restaurant Association. One of the best things that could have happened. I still stay involved as a director emeritus, and the connections and the contacts and the friendships that I've made, and the ability to pick up the phone and talk to somebody about an issue that is present in their community or in their restaurant. It's allowed me to be able to take a look at some of the challenges in our industry a long time before they really became talked about, like mental health issues and work-life balance. And even before that, when I opened the restaurant in 97 as a young man, I said, this is what I'm doing for my career. And it is a noble and a respected career in European cities, even in big major American cities. There are lifers in this industry, servers, bartenders. And that's what I wanted to bring to South Carolina, to Greenville. I wanted people to realize that it's a noble profession, and you can be a server until you're 60, 65 years old, and you can be a bartender, and you can be a cook and a chef and a sous chef. And so just having that mindset from day one allowed us to be a little bit ahead of the curve, but also the ability and the opportunity to meet folks like Danny Meyer, who were also forward thinking and cared about their employees and their associates and took care of them first. So just if you surround yourself with people that are doing the right thing and like-minded, then it tends to be a lot easier to kind of follow through with that and live that kind of culture. And that's what we've tried to create here at Table 301 is that culture. I can't think of a time when somebody said, I got a kid's recital I need to go to. And I was like, then go do that. The restaurant will run. It's kind of like when Michael said, I'm ready to go. I was like, then go, let's get you down there. They'll take care of themselves. The restaurant will run. But, like Michael said, wanting to be present for the kids and the family, those years go by and then they're gone. And so another thing that probably helped me was having my own two daughters, and they're 16 and 18 now. But over those last 8 years, I've been able to spend a lot of time with them. So knowing that and being a dad, then you respect and you understand what the moms and dads want to do with their kids and why they want to be there for them. Halloween, I'll work Halloween because that's not my favorite holiday. You take your kids out, and you go trick or treat and have all that fun.
Yes, we are recording this on Halloween. So
yes.
Is it hard to let go, Carl, when because you created these restaurants, and then you're like passing the ownership on to somebody else? Is that a challenge?
It's not. It hasn't been for Poppy's, Passerelle, Gianna. I tell everybody Sobeys is not on the table. Anything else, you guys can come to me and we'll talk through some strategies and ideas. Sobeys is just I spent 9-10 months of my life building it, like literally ripping out the walls of the existing business that it was. It was a retail shoe store before it was the restaurant. So my fingerprints are all over the walls of that, and my nickname growing up was Sobe, so it's kind of the namesake. It doesn't mean I love it any more than Nosedive or Lazy Goat or any of the others, but this one's hard to give up. I still, if I'm working an evening shift, it's usually in Sobeys. I expedited. I ran this past Friday and Saturday, and I get a kick out of it, and I watch the others that are doing it, and they're not doing it the right way. They're not doing it the way that I do it. But yeah, if I were younger, I would say giving up some of that control would be difficult, but I did because I was much more controlling and had to have my finger on everything in my 30s and maybe early 40s. And then I just realized that it's kind of like I said earlier, it's going to be all right. It's going to run. Just let the people that you've put faith in and that you trust take care of it. And it may not be perfect to my standard, but I'm not perfect, and my ways aren't always the only ways. And so as you age and you mature, you kind of learn a lot more of that and settle down a little bit.
Great. Well, I want to ask you more questions, but we're about out of time. So thank you both, Carl Sobocinski and Michael Minelli, for hanging out with me here. And congratulations on your success. And I wish you many, many more years of it. As many as you want.
Thank you, Brett. Always good to be with you. Get yourself down to Greenville sometime soon.